Hello everyone. So here I am with the second lecture on the development of. This is where we left in the previous lecture. That because of the craniocaudal folding, the heart has reached the ventral position. Because of the cardiac looping, heart has attained normal adult shape, and the pericardium is covering it all around. Now further, we will see how development of heart takes place for the formation of various chambers and the great vessels. Sinus venosus is also called as venous end of the heart, and it has two horns, right and the left horn. Each horn receives three veins: vitelline vein, which comes from the yolk sac, then umbilical vein, which is coming from the placenta, and one common cardinal vein formed by right and the left cardinal veins is coming from the body wall and bringing blood from the body wall. Sinus venosus is opening into the into the atrium, the common atrial chamber, through a sinoatrial opening, and this opening is guarded by the two valves, right and the left venous valves, which fuse cranially to form septum spurium. At around fifth week of intrauterine life, the right umbilical vein disappears. At the same time, on the left side, vitelline vein also starts obliterating. And in 10th week, common cardinal vein on the left side also obliterates. That leads to the shifting of blood flow from left side to the right side, more on the right side. So the right horn of the sinus venosus becomes enlarged as compared to the left, and it appears as if left horn of sinus venosus is opening into the right horn. Right horn of the sinus venosus gets absorbed into the right atrium, right portion of the atrium, forming the smooth part of the right atrium, the sinus venerum, while the left horn, which is a shrunken horn now, forms the coronary sinus. And the left common cardinal vein leads to the development of oblique vein of the left atrium. Till now, we have seen in the developing mm, heart tube that there is a single ventricle and single atrium. But by the end of the fourth week of intrauterine life, the heart starts showing septation so that two ventricles and two atria are formed. And along with that, even the truncus arteriosus divides to form two great vessels. So there are various methods how septations are formed within the developing heart. Either there are two growing masses which will grow towards each other and meet and then divide the cavity or the pathway into two. This is one method. And another is this method is generally seen due to the enlargement of endocardial cushions, which are found at the junction of the atria and the ventricle, that is at the level of atrioventricular canal or at the level of bulboventricular canal. Then another method is that only a single mass grows towards the other wall. There is no mass on the other side, only single mass grows. This generally is the method of septa of the atria and the ventricle to grow. Then another method is that there is a small area which is of the wall of any chamber of the heart which is not growing, while the adjacent areas are growing or expanding at a higher speed, and that will lead to the central ridge formation, which increases with the expansion of the side areas to form the septum. As we just mentioned about the endocardial cushions, which generally seen in atrioventricular canal or in the junction of outflow tract with the ventricles. So how they are developing? Normally, if you see the lumen, the wall of the lumen of any heart tube, any part of the heart tube is formed by the endocardium, and outside the endocardium is extracellular matrix. So these there is increase in the extracellular matrix, which leads to the endocardial cushion formations. That leads to the because of the bulge inside the cavity. The further expansion of the endocardial cushions occurs because of the cell migration into these extracellular matrix areas, and the cells in case of atrioventricular canal come from the endocardium, which is here the outer layer, sorry, not innermost layer, you can say, and in outflow tracts, that is in the bulbous cordis area, it will come from the neural crest cells, which are close to the hindbrain area. So we will first talk about the formation of septum intermedium. Septum intermedium is actually the septum formed within the junction of atria and the ventricle, so that it divides that atrioventricular area into two parts, right and the left side. So this, as I told you, that when septal formation in any part of the heart starts in the fourth week. So similarly here also, the at the end of the fourth week, endocardial cushions, they appear within the atrioventricular canal, which is a common canal, and there are four cushions they appear, as we can see here: superior, inferior, right, and left, or we call them as lateral cushions. The superior, inferior, or dorsal and the ventral cushions, they fuse with each other so that they divide the canal into right and the left atrioventricular canals. But the cushions which are on the lateral aspect, they do not join with any other cushions, and they remain as projection within the canal of its own side. As we have discussed earlier, that by the end of the fourth week, the septal formation occurs in various parts of the heart so that proper chambers are formed. Similarly, in the common atrial chamber also, the septum starts appearing in the from the roof, which is a sickle shaped septum called septum primum. This septum starts growing downwards towards septum intermedium, and there is a area through which right and the left side can communicate, and this is called as ostium primum. This ostium primum lies between the septum intermedium and the septum primum. Later on, the septum primum joins the septum intermedium, but at the same time it starts degenerating from the upper part, as we can see here. Now there is a separate opening is formed, which is close to the roof now, while the lower opening, that is ostium primum, ultimately obliterates because of the fusion with the septum intermedium. So this opening which has developed now is called as ostium secundum, through which now the blood will be flowing between the two atria. As soon as there is a degeneration starts in the upper part, just to the right, just to the right of septum primum, another septum appears from the roof, which is also a sickle shaped septum, and this is called as septum secundum. This septum secundum also grows towards the intermedium, but it does not meet totally fuse with the septum intermedium. Only two ends of the septum can join the septum intermedium. thus forming an indirect opening where we can see the blood can flow from this opening here and then ultimately through the foramen secundum into the left side or vice versa. So this indirect opening is called as foramen ovale. So we have seen that the septum, interatrial septum is now formed by the septum primum here, and then septum secundum, then septum intermedium, which is in the lower part where primum fuses. Primum, even the ends of the secundum fuse with the septum primum, and the septum spurium. I hope you remember septum spurium is when the two venous valves of sinoatrial opening they fuse in the upper part to form the septum spurium. This septum spurium also merges with the interatrial septum. Now let's talk about the foramen ovale once again. That foramen ovale is an, I told you, indirect opening, and the it is a indirect opening for to communicate between the two atrial chambers, and it is formed by the septum secundum. Lower margin of the septum secundum is lining it, while the base is formed by the septum primum. And this remains patent throughout the fetal life so that blood can flow through it and then pass through the septum secundum to or to either of the chambers depending upon the pressure of the chambers. So but later on with the as after birth, as the lungs start functioning, this foramen ovale it closes, right? And we have seen this in adult heart as a remnant called as fossa ovalis. The limbus is of the fossa ovalis is thus formed by the margin of the septum secundum, and the base of the fossa ovalis is formed by the septum primum. With the development of interatrial septum, atrial chamber has been divided into right and the left sides. So when the septum is developing at the same time, two atria are also developing. And if we see the right side of the chamber, we can see an opening here, which is also called as sinoatrial opening, which is lined by right venous valve, left venous valve, and the two valves cranially fuse to form septum spurium, which we just discussed. So the primitive atrium is responsible for the formation of that rough part of the right atrium that is forming the musculi pectinati plus the auricle of the right atrium. While the sinus venosus, which is opening here through sinoatrial opening, gets absorbed into the right atrium and is responsible for the formation of that smooth part of the right atrium, which is called as sinus venerum. Then right AV canal, that is atrioventricular canal, is responsible for the formation of that atrioventricular orifice, which is lined by the tricuspid valve. Then right venous valve, this one, this enlarges as the right as the sinus venosus gets absorbed into the right atrium. It also enlarges to form crista terminalis, and the lower part of it forms the valve around the inferior vena cava, which is rudimentary in adults and is also called as eustachian valve, and lowermost part forms the valve around the coronary sinus, which is called as Thebesian's valve. While the left side of the atrium, the primitive atrium leads to the formation of rough part of the left atrium, plus it also leads to a formation of left auricle. Now, rest of the left atrium, the majority part is formed by absorption of pulmonary vein, which is opening in, which can be seen as single opening in the beginning. And this pulmonary vein has been formed by the angiogenesis and is connected to the left side of the atrium. Then later on, this pulmonary vein gets absorbed into the left atrium, and we can see the two openings initially here. Then later on, these two veins also get absorbed, and thus leading to four separate openings of pulmonary vein. So the majority part of the uh, left atrium, which is most of it is smooth because of the formation absorption of the pulmonary vein into the left atrial chamber. Then left half of the AV canal is also contributing to it, which is responsible for the atrioventricular orifice, which is guarded by the bicuspid valve. Then we will see how these tricuspid and the bicuspid valves are developed. And we just recall that common atrioventricular opening, which is having four endocardial cushions, that is superior inferior, or we also call them as ventral dorsal, and two lateral uh, endocardial cushions. And we know that the superior inferior or the ventral and dorsal cushions, they fuse to form the septum intermedium, while the lateral endocardial cushions, they remain projecting into their respective AV canal. Now these when these endocardial cushions, they are proliferating, uh, this proliferation now occurs because of the mesenchymal tissue within the endocardial cushion. Then later on, the portion of the ventricular surface hollows out because of the bloodstream, and that leads to the formation of these uh, fibrous leaflets of the valves. Then these fibrous leaflets are attached to the muscular wall, which is now hollowed out and only attached to a portion with a thin fibrous strand. That thin fibrous strand now is called as chordae tendineae, and the portion of the muscular wall, it projects in the form of a pillar and is called as papillary muscle. So this is how, because of the bloodstream and hollowing out of the ventricular walls, the two AV openings are being guarded by the valves, and this is how they develop. The development of ventricle is also going on simultaneously. And if we remember from our gross anatomy that every ventricle has an inflow tract which is rough and an outflow tract which is smooth. So here the inflow tract is formed by the primitive ventricle, and that has the rough muscular wall containing ridges, bridges, and pillars, and the outflow tract is contributed by the middle third of the bulbous cordis, that is the conus cordis. So that is why it is smooth. The common ventricle is divided by the interventricular septum, so that the common ventricle is separated into right and the left ventricular chambers. So interventricular septum is formed, it has basically uh, three parts. The lower or the majority part is muscular, and it is called as muscular part. And then the upper part, uh, that is it is thin, just above the muscular part it is thin, and it is called as membranous part, and even higher, that is which is formed between the lower third of the bulbous cordis, it is called as the bulbar part. Now, how they are developing? First of all, the muscular part, as we have already discussed earlier also, that some septa develop because of the expansion of the adjacent areas. So, muscular part of interventricular septum is just an example of that. That is it is because the adjacent areas expand more and it appear as ridge, and then this ridge grows towards the septum intermedium, the septum which is dividing the atrioventricular canal. Then the bulbar part is formed by the right and the left bulbar ridges. They they are growing towards each other. These ridges are nothing but the endocardial cushions, as we can see here, the right and the left bulbar ridges. They are growing towards each other to form the bulbar part of the interatrial septum. And now there is a foramen which is left between the two, that is the muscular part and the bulbar part of the interatrial septum. This is called as interventricular foramen. Then how the membranous part is formed? Membranous part is formed by the fusion of the right side of the AV cushion it with the bulbar ridges here. They will join the basically septum intermedium more towards the right side, and all this will fuse with each other, and then finally will fuse with the muscular septum. So these are the two bulbar ridges, and this is the septum intermedium, or the ventral endocardial cushion, and this is the intermuscular septum. Then here we have now the AV canal, that is the left atrioventricular canal, which can be seen here. So this is how the interventricular septum is has developed, that it has various parts. So the upper part of the interventricular septum is the membranous part and the bulbar part, while the lower part is muscular. The next septum formation occurs within the upper part of the bulbous cordis. This is also called as truncal septum or spiral septum. Why spiral septum? Because of its septation in a twisted form. And this is actually starting as right and left bulbar ridges, continues into the conus part also as those right and left bulbar ridges. Later on, the right bulbar ridge goes first anteriorly and to the left, while the left bulbar ridge first goes posteriorly and then comes to lie on the right side. So this septation leads to different movements of aorta and the pulmonary trunk, which explains the relation of aorta and pulmonary trunk in adults also. As we can see here also, that pulmonary trunk is initially anterior, then to the left, and then posterior to the aorta. So here we have taken sections at various levels, say at the lower level, then at middle level, and then upper level of the uh, truncus arteriosus, where we can see various relations, which explains the relations in adult also. Now this septum is important, as we have discussed earlier also, that this endocardial cushion uh, which is forming these septa, spiral septum, they have the cells migrated from the neural crest. So neural crest cells are also responsible for the formation of craniofacial skeleton. So if any problem occurs in this septa, if any defect occurs, it may be associated with the neurofacial, craniofacial skeletal defects also. Now, just like atrioventricular cushions or the tricuspid and the bicuspid valves, The semilunar valves also are arising because of this local proliferation of the mesenchymal tissue. So these are also endocardial cushions of the truncus arteriosus. They appear as minor swellings first, and then two swellings, they grow, right and left swellings, they grow towards each other. And minor swelling, it remains as projecting into the corresponding lumen. So ultimately, with the formation of septa, as well as I told you, there is a complete division also occurs. So because of that, the aorta and the pulmonary trunk, they will have three valves because the septum is divided in the middle. So these endocardial cushions, they will be seen in both the sides, and they appear as three, uh, you can say, projections into the lumen. Later on, these projections, uh, which are seen here, later on with the flow of the blood, they get scalloped. Scalloped means they are hollowed out, but the hollow out, they occur. The hollowing occurs towards the great vessel, that is either towards the pulmonary trunk or towards the aorta, right? And the convexity is towards the ventricular surface, which was opposite in case of cusps. The hollowing was occurring in the ventricle. So this occurs because of the bloodstream and the pressure in the bloodstream. So this is how the semilunar valves, they arise or develop. Then we got to correlate the development with various clinical defects. We have already discussed about the dextrocardia, why it occurs. In the previous lecture, we have discussed it. So we will move on to the next, that is the defects in the septa. Septal formation we have seen between the atria or between the ventricles or even the uh, truncus arteriosus. So these septa may be, there may be a defects in these septa formation. So first of all is atrial septal defect. There is a abnormal communication between the right and the left atria, which normally is not seen, of course, in adults, though it is there in the in form of foramen ovale in case of fetus. So incidence of this is one of the commonest congenital anomaly, and the incidence is quite high, 6.4 in 10,000 births, and it is more common in females. This type of you can say atrial septal defect is various. There are three types. That is ostium secundum defect, which is the commonest, ostium primum defect, and endocardial cushion defect. Ostium secundum, if you remember, it is formed uh, within the ostium septum primum in the upper part due to the degeneration. Now, this defect can occur only if there is a large opening of the ostium secundum, which cannot be covered by normally developing ostium septum secundum, or there may be a small septum secundum. So this will all cause, you can say, this will not cover the ostium secundum completely, so will lead to the defect called as ostium secundum type of atrial septal defect. So here we have this large foramen ovale will be seen because this is seen if the septum secundum is short, right? Then ostium primum defect, it is due to the failure of septum primum to fuse with the septum intermedium. So that will so the ostium primum uh, will not disappear, rather it will be seen as a separate opening. Then Quadrilocular biventricular means there is complete absence of interatrial septum. So atrium remains as a single chamber while the ventricles are two. So it forms three-chambered heart. That is why it is called as quadrilocular biventricular means two ventricles are there, but otherwise it is a three-chambered heart. Right. Then third type is endocardial cushion defect. Now, endocardial cushion is responsible for intermediate septum formation. Now, if you remember, the intermediate septum is also responsible for completion of interatrial septal as well as membranous part of the interventricular septum. So, because of that, because of the failure of atrioventricular cushion, there can be a persistence or a common AV canal, first of all, because the septum is not formed, and because septum is not there, so the septum primum cannot join with any intermediate septum because it is absent. So that will lead to the septum primum kind of a defect in the interatrial septum. At the same time, membranous septum in the ventricle will not be formed, so it will also lead to the ventricular septal defect in the membranous part of the interventricular septum. So this is a type of defect which is seen in the endocardial cushion defect, and this type of a defect is commonly seen in people with Down syndrome. We have seen that the interventricular septum is formed by union of three parts, that is bulbar part, membranous part, and the muscular part. So any defect in the fusion of these three parts can lead to hole within the interventricular septum called ventricular septal defect. Ventricular septal defect is also common. It is seen 12 in 12 cases of 10,000 births. Why it is common? Because generally atrial septal defect, though I said is the commonest form, but it is not detected till in the late in the life because it is asymptomatic most of the time, especially the secundum defect. While ventricular septal defects generally present very early and so detected very early, so the incidence remains high as a symptomatic heart disease. So it is 80% it is seen as a defect in the muscular part of the septum, but if it is in the muscular part of the septum, generally it is repaired by itself as the child grows. But the defect in the membranous part needs surgical intervention. And because there is a defect in in the ventricular septum, and after birth we know that ventricular pressure is always higher than the right ventricular, so the blood will flow from the left side to the right side. Since there is mixing of the blood, that is oxygenated deoxygenated blood mixing is occurring on the right side, so it is not affecting the child much as such in case of oxygenation. But yes, the volume of blood increases on the right side, so the more volume is going to the pulmonary trunk to the lungs. So this will lead to the frequent congestion of the lungs, and patient will come frequently at a younger age with the history of repeated pneumonias. Next is defects in the conotruncal septum or the spiral septum. This can lead to many type of syndromes or many type of defects. One of them is persistent truncus arteriosus. If the septum is not formed at all, the truncus arteriosus will remain as a common area. From here, where ultimately the pulmonary arteries will join through angiogenesis, and as well as the rest of the aorta, which is developing from aortic arches, we will discuss later on, will also join here. And the there will be mixed blood which will be going to the pulmonary trunk as well pulmonary arteries as well as through the aorta. So this can lead to uh, person having lot of deoxygenated blood in the body and will lead to blue discoloration and called as cyanosis. At the same time, because the bulbar ridges have not developed, so ventricular septum will also not be complete, so there will be a VST associated with it. Because VST is associated, so truncus arteriosus is a large opening, it will be catering to both the ventricles as we have seen here. Next type of defect which is seen um, is the transposition of great vessels. Transposition of great vessels is another cyanotic heart disease, means there is blue discoloration of the body because of the deoxygenated blood, even in aorta. So what will happen here? The the spiral septum has wound to the opposite side, first of all. If you remember, we talked about the spiral septum, that the right bulbar ridge goes anteriorly and to the left, while the left goes posteriorly and to the right. So it will occur in the opposite way, that the right bulbar ridge will go posterior and to left. So this will lead to the formation of two uh, great vessels which are opening into the opposite ventricles. Like the aorta is opening into the right ventricle and the pulmonary trunk is getting its blood through the left ventricle. So here the spiral septum has not wound properly, or the twisting has occurred in an opposite manner. So because of that, the right ventricle which is having deoxygenated blood, totally deoxygenated blood, will go to the aorta, and the pulmonary trunk which takes blood from the left ventricle which is oxygenated again to the lungs for the oxygenation. So this in this case the person will be coming with the cyanosis. So we can see here the pathophysiology. The pulmonary and the systemic circulation function in parallel rather than in series. There is a transposition of great vessels. Oxygenated pulmonary venous blood returns to the left atrium and to the left ventricles and recirculate to the pulmonary vascular bed via abnormal pulmonary artery connections with the left ventricle. Then the third important defect here is tetralogy of Fallot. Tetralogy of Fallot is a cyanotic heart disease, which is one of the commonest cyanotic heart disease, and it has four components. That is why it is called as tetralogy. The components are pulmonary stenosis, which is the main reason for everything, then right ventricular hypertrophy, then ventricular septal defect, and overriding of aorta. So first of all, you can see here the pulmonary opening is almost closed, so it is called as pulmonary stenosis. Because of that, it takes a lot of effort for the right ventricle to push blood through this pulmonary opening, so it is also as thick as the left ventricle, leading to hypertrophy. And then there is a ventricular septal defect, and the aorta is catering to both the ventricles. That this is called as, this condition of the aorta is called as overriding aorta. The incidence, as I told you, it is one of the commonest cyanotic heart disease. So incidence is 9.6 per 10,000 births, and it is most common cyanotic heart disease. So now, what is the reason for this tetralogy? That is, it occurs because there is a right shift of the conotruncal septum, the spiral septum which we are talking about. So this will not divide the pulmonary trunk and the aorta into equal halves. Rather, the pulmonary trunk, because it is shifted to the right, so the pulmonary trunk will be smaller, and that will lead to a large opening uh, of the aorta. This large aortic opening receives blood from both the sides because it is so large that it is covering both the ventricles, which is called as overriding of aorta. And it causes, because bulboventricular septum, the conotruncal septum has shifted towards the right side. So that means it will not be able to fuse with the septum intermedium. So because of that, there is ventricular septal defect also. So what is the pathophysiology? That is, there is a pulmonary stenosis, we know that. And because of that, because of the pulmonary stenosis, the right ventricle has to work harder. So that is why its muscles get enlarged and causing ventricular hypertrophy. At the same time, because the whole amount of the blood uh, has to be pushed very forcefully, so there is increase in the right ventricular pressure. So now the pressure is increased, it will push the blood through other openings, because we already know that there is there is overriding of aorta, so the blood will be pushed through aorta also. Then that way, it will do, it will carry the deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the body. Now at the same time, uh, there is a ventricular septal defect also, because the pressure inside the right ventricle is more, so the blood from the right side will be pushed to the left side. So again, the left ventricle now will have mixing of the blood, that is oxygenated and deoxygenated blood will be mixed, and then again, which will also be going out through the aorta, and again left ventricle is also giving aorta the deoxygenated blood, which will ultimately lead to various symptoms. Now, the person or the child presents with blue baby, that is because the body contains deoxygenated blood, so there will be cyanosis. And there is easy fatigability, like even as a child, when the child is even suckling milk, he or she will get tired very easily and will stop suckling very soon. That is because of less of oxygen in the blood. Then whenever the oxygen levels are, more oxygen levels are required, like in exercise or any work, the child will have acute hypoxia, especially to the brain, and it will lead to syncopal spells or syncopal attack. Means the child will become unconscious suddenly whenever he attempts doing something, some muscular work or some exercise, or even walking for a long time. So these are the problems, these are the clinical manifestations of the tetralogy of Fallot. And if we see an X-ray of that child, it will give a appearance of a boot shaped heart, as you can see in this picture. So this is a boot shaped heart because heart is abnormally enlarged. So that's all for today. And with this, we have finished with the development of heart as such and its clinical manifestations. And next lecture, we will be discussing development of arteries of the because of from the arch arteries. Thank you.